Okay, and so we have our final talk of the session, which is a new museum display for the blind. Does it make a difference? Being presented today by Claire Smith, but also in partnership with Amanda Callaghan, Caitlin Walton, and Emma Dunford from the Cole Museum of Zoology, University of Reading.
Okay, well, if everybody wants to go to lunch really early, I can tell you now that the answer is not yet. What have I pressed? Oh, there we go. We're back. Oh, heck. Where are my pictures? Okay, this doesn't look like the finished slides. Okay, well.
Everybody close your eyes.
Everybody just imagine a lovely picture. So similar to Anna, we've been working on a display for visually impaired people at the Cole Museum of Zoology, which is part of the University of Reading. I'm the graduate teaching assistant slash fluid preservation collection manager slash PhD researcher. And this project was mainly worked on by Amanda Callaghan and Caitlin Walton. So back in 2020, we moved into a brand new building, which was built for biological sciences. The architects had allocated a display space for the museum, but there we go. Despite our feedback at the time, it wasn't designed with the needs of a museum in mind. So we're in an atrium with underfloor heating. So that's nice. And so the light from the atrium obviously coming through creates a lot of glare and reflections, and it's simply too bright for some visitors with light sensitivity as part of their visual impairment. And then by contrast, the areas of the museum that are away from the atrium, we try to maintain those at as dark a level as possible to protect the specimens from the effects of light as much as possible. In fact, in this this image here of the darker section of the museum, we have actually turned the lights down a little bit more since then. So it's very much, it's a small museum, but it's definitely a museum of two halves in terms of light and shade. The glass roof of the atrium also causes reflections on the display panels. So there's a display panel which you can see in front of our elephant skeleton there, Norman, which has actually been updated since this photo. It's got an elephant tooth mounted in it, and it's got a layer of perspex over the top of the display to protect the elephant tooth. And the result of that is that you can't read any of the text because it's directly below these enormous stripy windows. So, yeah, this is definitely not my finished presentation. Look at the picture, don't read the bullet points. So, as Beatrice mentioned in her lightning talk, we're a university museum. And as a result of that, our primary audience is our own students. So the museum displays were designed and developed by our curator, Professor Amanda Callaghan, and they were designed to support the fundamental module in undergraduate zoology teaching, which is called Animal Form and Function. So because our primary audience is our own undergrads, plus visiting school groups, the displays are designed to convey a lot of scientific information in quite a small space. So as you can see, that makes them quite text heavy. We're not a family museum. We're not a public focused museum. We do have families and members of the public coming in, but they're not our primary audience. So our interpretation is at an A-level, an undergraduate student level, which again creates its own complications and barriers to use. So Oh dear. No. Okay, I'm just going to hold up a little picture there. In 2023, we had a group visit from a mixed age adult group from a local charity called Berkshire Vision, who run various groups for people with different types of visual impairments. We ran a mini zoology practical for them in our science lab, talking about the anatomy of animals, and we gave them skulls that they could handle, starfish, corals, things like that, that could be safely handled and also quite easily understood when you pick them up and sort of turn them around and look at them from all angles. Based on the feedback from that visit, it became quite clear that we needed better support for visually impaired people in the museum. As we've all faced, I'm sure, everything's behind glass, everything has different light levels. It might as well not be there for some visitors with visual impairments. So we had a space for a new display. So we wanted to incorporate braille, audio, and 3D printed models for handling. So we applied for funding from the Friends of the University of Reading, who support various public-facing projects across the university, and we got a little grant of £2,500 from the Friends of the University of Reading. The original plan was to collaborate a lot more closely with Berkshire Vision's different client groups for the design of the display. But unfortunately, due to a lack of resources on their part, they were unfortunately just far too overstretched to take on the project with us. So we had to work based just on the feedback that we'd had from them in that one visit. So the display itself was designed by the university's creative and print services to match the style of the rest of the museum. And the braille elements were designed in collaboration with the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for Blind People. We also had 3D models printed in-house by our own biomedical sciences department. So the university prefers, if possible, that projects of any kind are carried out in-house. So that restricted us a little bit with what we could do and who we could work with. Let's see if I've got a picture. No, I haven't. Oh my goodness. Oh dear. I'm going to hold up a little piece of paper again. So the concept for the display, because it is designed to match what we've got in the rest of the museum, I don't know if you can even remotely see that. But again, it's very text heavy. And the big gap that you can see is the space where the braille goes. That had been in the museum for 2 days before a visitor from a school group had scribbled on it. But the idea is there's a row of animals pictured across the top, and the idea was that each of those would have a 3D printed model to go with it, which visually impaired visitors could read the braille and then handle the object. And the theme of the display is animal symmetry, because that is one of the foundational things that the students learn in their animal form and function module. And symmetry is a really difficult concept to convey if you can't see it. So we thought that having these models and having the braille to back it up would be a really good idea. So, well, that's the short version. Yes, we did the 3D printing in-house. It was done by our biomedical sciences department, who work primarily with filament printers, PLA filament. We learned that this is a very slow process, partly due to the other demands on the time of the technician who was doing the work for us, and partly because we needed to do multiple iterations of some of the models to make sure that the size was right, or the orientation was right, or that they would sit nicely on the sloped display space that we've got. So we supplied the SVG files that the printer needs to generate the models, and some came out better than others. we printed a sea anemone as a lovely example of radial symmetry. Came out about this big. It was rock hard and really, really spiky. The first word out of my mouth when I picked it up was ouch. So we were like, okay, we definitely can't put that on display. That's no good. So we ended up for that one going to an aquarium supplier and getting some cute little sea anemone models in a much softer plastic. So the display panel is in place, and we'd hoped to come to you and say, oh yes, we reviewed all of these visitors and we had all of this feedback. We're not there yet. We did have a visiting group from My Vision Oxfordshire, who we don't have a picture of. Again, I've got a lovely picture of a group of people all looking very interested and the guide dog looking bored as anything. So we asked for their feedback on the display, and we also took them into the lab for a handling session, which they loved. And they got to express some opinions on the differences between handling sort of real skulls versus the resin cast ones, looking at resin printed objects versus filament printed objects. And the feedback that they gave us was basically, you are never going to create a display which is suitable for every single visually impaired person, because visual impairment is a spectrum. And one person might need very bright light to see, another person might that might cause them terrible pain, and they might not see anything at all. We were very proud of our Braille. Not one person in the My Vision Oxfordshire group could read Braille, because they were all older adults. And what we didn't find out from consulting with the RNIB was that Braille is not universally taught unless you have a visual impairment from a very young age. So we were like, brilliant, we'll put Braille in. We've done a lovely job. And actually, for the 2 visiting groups that came to us, it was absolutely useless. And what they actually wanted, the universal feedback was, can we have a pair of headphones and a big red button to press? Which, unfortunately, we can't provide that with the infrastructure in our museum. But that was the main feedback. We do have an audio recording that's in progress that will go on the museum display and on our website. Let me see. Nope. That's a lovely view of our elephant skeleton as represented by one of our visitors. And I think the key point that I think we've all learned when we work on projects for people with any kind of disabilities is you have to do your research. You can't just go to your in-house design department and say, we would like a lovely display that matches our museum for visually impaired people. Yeah, we've stuck a bit of Braille on it, it's fine. You have to have the consultation right from the very beginning with groups who are willing and able to work with you to provide that feedback. We did discover in the process of doing this that one of our local high schools actually has a department which is specifically geared for children with visual impairments. So they do teach Braille. So they can come hopefully and give us some feedback on whether the piece of Braille is actually valuable to them. We're going to do another round of testing with the 3D printed models, again, to try and get some consensus on materials. Is it okay if we're looking at symmetry, if you have a sea anemone that's actually quite hard? So what's the primary purpose of the display? Is it just to have symmetrical shapes? Is it to have the representations of the colours or the textures of the real thing? What do our visitors actually want? So while we don't have any lovely statistics of, yes, we improved our visitor experience by this much, despite the feedback that our display was not that accessible, or not as accessible as we would have liked it to be, all the groups who visited so far would like to come back. They particularly enjoyed the handling sessions, so that's something that we're definitely going to work on more in the future. But it's still a work in progress, so we have a way to go. And I'm hoping I've got my little thank you slide. I think that's everybody. But yes, this is on the right there. That's all the people within the university who worked on the project with us, and also the Friends of the University of Reading who provided the funding, and our in-house creative and print services who very kindly put together the display for us. And of course, the important people, the charity groups across the top there, who came and did the visits, brought their adorable guide dog into our science lab, best day ever, and are continuing to work with us and give us feedback on this piece of work. And apologies about the terrible presentation. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so we've got a few minutes left for questions, and then we'll be breaking for lunch. So does anybody have any questions? Hands? Yeah, lady at the back there.
Hello, thank you for that. Even without photos, it was very interesting. I'm wondering how many panels you were able to create with this project, and is there, are you looking to further it out and create more as you go forward?
Yeah, we created a grand total of 1 panel for this project because it was a chance to bring in a new piece of interpretation that wasn't already in the museum and which also fitted in with our undergraduate teaching. At the moment, we're not planning to incorporate any more models on direct display. We might have some that we can bring out for handling. And we're not planning any more Braille at the moment. We have just applied for funding for a longer term project to put QR codes into each case and to have sort of 2 versions of the audio. One which is literally reading out what's on the interpretation so that our undergraduate students can still get exactly the same experience. And then also a more creatively interpreted version where we can pull out a bit more. This is the exciting specimen in this cabinet. This is what you're looking at over here. So that is all, as a result of this sort of starting point, those kinds of things are now in the works.
Question there, Paolo.
This is more of a comment than a question.
Oh no! Thanks, Paolo.
I think you did remarkably well considering your presentation wasn't quite well, but thanks for that. And I do actually have a question. And the question is, you mentioned that there were handling sessions in the labs afterwards, and there's obviously the 3D printed models. Do you know if there's any kind of sense from the visiting groups whether they had a preference for the handling of real objects over the 3D printed ones? Did they actually express much around that?
Yes, and the consensus throughout was we would rather handle real things. The only possible exception to that was we had some resin cast skulls, and we got some primate skulls, and they thought they were close enough to the real thing in terms of sort of texture and weight and sort of surface. They weren't indistinguishable, but they were close enough that they thought those were pretty good. The filament printing, not at all, because it comes with its own inherent texture because it's built up from layers and layers of plastic. The texture that's inherent to the models just sort of overrode anything else that they could have learned about the texture of that object. Hilariously, we 3D filament printed a sponge. Yeah. Mainly on the theory that if we put real sponges out on display, they would just get destroyed in 3 seconds flat. And because it's about symmetry, we thought, well, people can tell shape from this. Surely you can tell that it's an irregular shape. Absolutely. Everybody hated it, as they should.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this on? Yes. I was wondering if you have thought about investing in training your staff in audio described tours, just because we trialed it in Cardiff, and rather than investing money in a panel, it basically, if you've got the resources, is a really good way of engaging with that community, targeting tours. But we've found as well that in addition to helping with visually impaired tours, it helps with dementia workshops and a whole series of other types, and actually quite a lot of just general visitors with that kind of caveat. do enjoy those tours as well. So it's a really good investment of resource in that front. So I didn't know if you'd considered that too.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, it's on our radar. We're doing a lot of work with volunteers in the museum, and this year we've got a small bunch of students who are really, really interested in outreach and engagement and teaching. So we are pressing them into service at every possible opportunity because they're really, really keen. One of them has experience of working with school children with additional needs. And yeah, they took part in the My Vision Oxfordshire visit. They took a lot of the feedback for us in terms of just asking people questions and getting their preferences. And they were also really keen in giving a variety of tours, even of the museum, for different audiences. And so, yeah, that's something that is definitely, we want to get those students particularly involved in giving tours to a lot of different audiences.
Just to say, we found that it's a really good way of not only engaging that community with the museum, but it helps that community to engage with each other as well. So they've now kind of not attached themselves to the museum, but they like feel comfortable and more welcomed in that space, and they are more regular in when they come to the museum as well, which has been a really great kind of process, I think.
Yeah, that's been really nice. That's been a really good thing that's come out of this project, is that the groups who did visit us, despite the fact that they looked at our beautiful new display and went, nah. Yeah. They all wanted to come back, and they were like, oh yes, our teenage group would love this, or our, animal group would, all of these different groups would love this, and can we come back? Can you invite them? Can you get things out for us again? So it's definitely an audience that we're going to be working with a lot more. So yeah, training up our staff and volunteers is definitely going to be the way to go for that.
Okay, that's it for questions, I'm afraid, but Claire is obviously here for the rest of the conference if you want to ask her any more questions. So we now have lunch. So lunch is until 1:30. And so we also have our wonderful trade stands. So please go into the conference room across the hallway near the lift, where you've got lots of exciting stalls. Please do talk to our stall holders about all the wonderful things that they've brought to us. And then we have our AGM, which is at 1:30 in this room. So please, all of you, as many of you who would like to come, please do come. It's fantastic way to sort of like make you feel a part of NatSCA, because obviously we run it for you. So yes, go eat, be refreshed.